you look at the opportunities that we have in front of us here, it's fabulous. It's fascinating. And you look at the disconnect we have in the market now between our share price and the underlying value of our assets. To give you an example, obviously metal prices have gone up dramatically since we did the pre-fees at KSM in 2022. If you run that mine plan using $2,600 gold and $4 copper, you're showing a project that will have an after-tax NPV of about $15 billion.
All right, Rudi, it's really, really great to have you back with us here today on Mine Stock Talk. It's been a little while since we last chatted with you.
Good to be back, Robin. Good to be back, Kevin. Thank you.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, we're just gonna dig right into it. My silly little mining puns. And we'll start with the most recent news and project updates. And I guess you could just start with the KSM project. Now, you guys received a substantially started designation from the BC government back in last July. So I just wanted to kind of get an update on what the status of that is now, and if there's any progress in partnership discussions for the KSMs. You know, there was mention in your news release about it that it opens the opportunity for joint ventures to come into the play.
Yeah. So substantially started designation was a key de-risking event for the project. So KSM sits today as really the only undeveloped large gold copper project in the world that's shovel ready with permits in hand. However, those permits were set to expire in July of 2026. You can imagine that any company coming in and looking at KSM as an opportunity, they'd be worried about that. So getting that designation was important because that designation ensures that the permits we have are now good for the life of the project. And the life of the project at KSM is well beyond 50 years. So the permits are now good for a long, long time. And that designation in itself really triggered a kickstart on our joint venture discussions. You know, up until that point in time, we had 6 or 7 companies kicking the tires. But as a result of that designation, 3 of them really stepped forward. And we're now in discussions in terms of terms and structure, which what I will call the 3 finalists on a joint venture, and hoping to move forward towards a transaction sometime soon. The downside was after we got that designation in late November and early December, we had 2 petitions filed against that designation, basically claiming that the government was unreasonable in granting us that designation, which, to be perfectly honest, is absurd.
We caught wind of that actually. And we were kind of curious and like a little confused of what was going on.
So it was the first petition was filed by the 𝐒𝐄𝐀𝐁𝐑𝐈𝐃𝐆𝐄, which is a small band. They consider themselves a First Nation. The government considers them a WILP of the 𝐒𝐄𝐀𝐁 Nation. And by the way, 𝐒𝐄𝐀𝐁 Nation supported the substantially started designation. And the 𝐒𝐄𝐀𝐁𝐑𝐈𝐃𝐆𝐄 are claiming that, number one, the government did not properly engage with them during consultation, which is not right. The government did the same work with them that they did with the other larger First Nations. And second, that the decision by the government was unreasonable. When you look at the work that we did at KSM, specifically on substantially started activities, all the construction activities, building roads, building bridges, building fish compensation areas, building roads, tying into the power grid with BC Hydro, we spent far more money than anyone else in the history of substantially started determination in British Columbia on more fronts. And then on top of that, in addition to the work we did, we had the support and endorsement of the Nisga'a Nation, the Tahltan Nation, the 𝐒𝐄𝐻 hereditary chiefs, the town of Stewart, the town of Smithers, the town of New Hazelton, and the town of Terrace. So everybody that's going to be impacted by this project in a big way supported the designation and were fine with the government's decision. So the 𝐒𝐄𝐀𝐁𝐈𝐃 are now requesting a relook at this to see whether the government was reasonable. And as I just can't see how anyone could look at the work we did here and come to a different decision. And then the second petition was filed by 2 groups. One was Skeena Wild, an NGO, and also 𝐒𝐄𝐀, which is a group that represents 15 of the smaller Aboriginal groups in Southeast Alaska, claiming that they were filing this petition on behalf of the citizens of British Columbia. Again, the citizens of British Columbia that are most impacted by this project supported substantially started, and also that the government was unreasonable. And obviously, the market doesn't like these types of challenges. And as a result, unfortunately, our share price did trade down from reaching a nice high after we got that designation and traded down because of some of the uncertainty. Now, what I will tell you is we are confident that the government did the right thing. The government is confident that they did all the consultation that was required above and beyond. and we just need to get through the process here to have these canceled.
And so basically, those are groups that are complaining of an existing decision that is obviously well justified, being substantially started project. And so I suppose what the government or the courts would eventually hear it and decide, throw it out.
In the first petition, Seabridge wasn't named, there was just the government. So the government is replying to the petition paragraph by paragraph to show that they did all the proper work in terms of consultation with the 𝐒𝐄𝐀𝐁𝐑𝐈𝐃𝐆𝐄 and that their decision was reasonable. The second petition was filed against the government and Seabridge, which gives us standing. And both of these petitions will now be joined together. So it's only one hearing we need to go through. So Seabridge and the government now are putting together their responses to the petitions, and then we'll have our day in front of a judge.
From what I read, you'll win it. You basically already have.
Well, I mean, in the meantime, the designation we have is valid and binding.
Yeah.
And we're moving forward on that. We're not stopping though. Just because we got that designation, you don't come to full stop. We're continuing significant work programs at the project, including advancing work with BC Hydro to build a switching station so we can tie into the Northwest Transmission Line and have green hydropower available to us in the not too distant future.
So what is the issue about the license to occupy the Mitchell Tunnel?
No issue to us. The Mitchell Treaty Tunnel is a key component of the KSM project. It's basically a tunnel system that'll connect the 5 deposits, the mine side of the deposit, to where the mill and the tailings facility will be. We've been authorized on this tunnel in terms of access and mineral reserves and permits now for some time. Part of that tunnel does go through the ground of Tudor, though, but in that Tudor does not have a defined project yet, or even where the project would look like. Our tunnel continues to go ahead. We have a mineral reserve, which gives us exclusive rights essentially to that swath of ground that the tunnel will go through. It doesn't allow any other company to interfere with our activities there. We have a permit that gives us the right to actually construct the portals for the tunnels, as well as the first 100 meters of tunnel length and cross sections. And we have now a license of occupation that was set to expire 2024, which has now been extended for another 20 years, which gives us the right to be on the ground to do that work, even though somebody else has a mineral claim against that. We have made it very clear to Tudor that, look, we're happy to sit down with you when you have a project that's going to go ahead, that's permitted, that the tunnel does interfere. We can easily sit down with you and find a way to flex a portion of that tunnel to avoid your ground. But they don't have a project yet. They're still working towards that, and they keep changing the goalposts in terms of what that project might look like.
It's so interesting because we've had discussions about this, and we were always wondering if Tudor was getting their nose bent and joined a little bit over it, or like what the real deal was. So it's kind of great that you're able to fill us in a little bit on that.
The real deal is our rights for the tunnel were in place before Tudor even came into the picture.
Gotcha.
Right. So that means that these last two, call them hurdles or issues of that, you're on the right side of it, and they'll probably be resolved fairly quickly, I would think.
Yeah, we think so. I mean, what we have in place in front of the government now is the completion of the tunnel permits, not just the portals and the first 100 meters, but the entire tunnel length for construction. And that's now in front of the government for approval.
Oh, I see. Good. So it's really close. Now, the last announcement, though, that you made, Rudi, was about the at the market offering that the company's doing, and it's not. I've heard of them obviously happening, but it's not usual you see it. So what's the strategy here?
Well, it's something that we have had in place for 5 years.
Oh.
It's a way to raise capital on basically a daily basis if you choose to, without having a jump ball in the market between bankers. So it allows us as a company to sell shares directly into the market if we like the price and the volume is there. We've been using this ATM product now for 5 years. Last year alone, I think we raised $77 million Canadian using the ATM. It's an effective way to raise capital that we have used for a long period of time. So it's just a continuation of what we've done for the last 5 years. We only issue shares if we can offset that dilution with ounces in the ground. Last year, we used the ATM, but we offset dilution last year with adding over 12 million ounces of gold to our resources and about 4 billion pounds of copper. Yeah, so we did suffer dilution last year, but we did increase our ounces of gold per common share, which to us is the important metric in terms of is the dilution you're suffering actually gaining a value for your shareholders.
It's an interesting and obviously successful way to look at it.
Well, the fact is, if most companies tried to do that, the shareholders look at it and says, wow, you're really destroying value. And it's not just the juniors. We have a chart in our presentation that looks at how the majors have done in terms of per share metrics, in terms of share capital, shares outstanding over a long period of time, reserves and production. And these big companies like Newmont and Barrick and Kinross and others have destroyed per share metrics in terms of ounces of gold reserves per common share or ounces of production per common share. And that's why when you look at the long-term track record in terms of share price performance, they have significantly underperformed the gold price and other gold equities. And this is a metric that our shareholders hold us accountable to, and one that we've been able to follow and deliver on for 25 years now.
I would also put forth a fairly strong argument for why a big, huge company like Agnico and that will need to make M&A deals that are good if it could change that equation on their book.
And the one firm that actually has done it correctly over the years is Agnico Eagle. We in our chart and our presentation, we actually show them that they've increased their share count dramatically as a result of the acquisitions they did, but the reserves went up dramatically and the production went up dramatically. So in terms of production per share, that grew, and in terms of reserves per share, even with the dilution, they more than offset that with what they bought in terms of reserves.
Now that's interesting. That puts a really strong argument forward for M&A activity going through the year coming.
It's coming. It has to. I think the big companies still want to get their balance sheets in order. Newmont just successfully finished the sale of non-core assets that they brought in when they acquired Goldcorp years ago, and more recently Newcrest. They now raised about $4.3 billion in cash from selling non-core assets. I won't tell you what they paid for those assets when they bought those companies. It really wasn't accretive, but it is a big number that now they can put out into the market in terms of dividends or share buybacks or whatever.
So the other projects, how are they coming?
We are really excited about what we found at ISKET last year. We bought ISKET in 2016 by buying a small public company called Snip Gold that had blown themselves up in the market in terms of share dilution. And we bought ISKET because we saw a lot of similarities to what we saw at KSM when we bought that from Placer Dome in the year 2000. It's a big system. There's a lot of gold and copper, but we always thought that there was potential to find a big gold copper deposit. We had a small one there called Bronson Slope that we increased by about 3 million ounces last year in terms of work we did. But the real prize there is this Snip North Zone, where we intersected 300 to 500 meters of continuous mineralization of gold and copper, pretty much from the surface, at grades that are similar to the reserve grades we have at KSM. We think that the Snip North deposit is going to be a big, big, big deposit. And by big, I mean 1 billion tons, perhaps or more. This year, we have a $15 million program dedicated to ISKET to focus on not just infill drilling at Snip North, but also to extend that deposit down dip and along strike. And then off the back of this year's drill program there, we will announce an initial resource estimate at Snip North that I think will once again be the vehicle that'll be used to offset dilution.
That sounds like a really good project that you haven't had it that long then.
Well, we've had it since 2016, but we've been focused on KSM.
Yeah.
Now we're getting back to what we built this company on, our ability to recognize early stage exploration opportunities and then grow them through the drill bit. And so this kind of is one we've kind of been sitting on, moving it slowly along every year. But now this is where we finally tackle it to show really what we saw when we bought this and now making that a reality.
Right. So for the Three Aces property, what's the deal with the core drilling program in the central core area? And do you suspect that there'll be new target opportunities on the horizon for it?
Yeah, we do. So last year we had a program that really was looking to confirm the geologic model that we have for Three Aces. We have made some tweaking to that model based on drilling we did last year. We did find gold in a lot of different areas, but based on the work we did and the geophysics we also did, we think that the most immediate opportunity is to extend that central core zone to the south. So we have a $5 million program lined up for Three Aces this year to focus on drilling to the south of the central core zone to identify areas where we can start to delineate resources with additional work.
The year ahead obviously has a lot coming from it with KSM and now also the other projects. It should be a fascinating 12 months.
It always is in our company, it seems. It's I have to pinch myself. I mean, last October we celebrated our 25th anniversary. I never thought I'd have a job this long in one company, but here I sit, still the CEO. If you look at the opportunities that we have in front of us here, it's fabulous. It's fascinating. And you look at the disconnect we have in the market now between our share price and the underlying value of our assets. To give you an example, obviously metal prices have gone up dramatically since we did the pre-fees at KSM in 2022. If you run that mine plan using $2,600 gold and $4 copper, you're showing a project that will have an after-tax NPV of about $15 billion US. We're trading today at about $1 billion market cap. So we're trading at about 7% of our after-tax NAV at current spot prices. Development stage companies tend to trade at 30, 40 to even 50% of their after-tax NPV. That's how cheap our stock is, as well as other developers, to be honest. So when you look at what the upside potential is here and just getting the real value we should get for this asset, and that'll be triggered by a joint venture, I get that. And that's my biggest objective for this year, is to get that deal done finally with a company that has the technical, financial, and social wherewithal to step up and build and operate KSM.
Well, that sounds really exciting. That basically took away our last kind of question, which was what's the main goal for this coming year? And you've covered it with the idea of JV or a deal of some sort with a major.
Getting a deal done with a major on KSM, but also advancing SNP North, where we can now show what is the next level of growth for the company in terms of new resource additions, both in terms of gold and copper.
And so the SNP property, though, can you just refresh us? Where is it located and how does it work for infrastructure?
It's about 40 kilometers as the crow flies from the center of the KSM project. So it's in the Golden Triangle, and it's just immediately adjacent to the SNP mine that ISKET mining now has, and not that far away from that Skeena mining has. They've got the SNP mine, and not that far away from the ISKET mine that Skeena is also looking to advance now through environmental assessment and into a mine. So it's in a very hot area, as an area that's now become the focus of the major mining companies. I don't know if you were at the Roundup conference last week in Vancouver, but a senior person from Newmont stood up at the podium and talked about the Golden Triangle as a place that they want to focus on going forward. And here we sit with the largest thing, not just in the Golden Triangle, but in the world. So I like our future.
Calling all savvy investors in mining and resources. Seeking the inside track on Seabridge Gold? Look no further than minestalkers.com. Our cutting-edge search tool is designed to reveal hidden gems and provides real-time stock updates. Visit for the insights and stay for the gains. Seize the opportunity and explore the magic at minestalkers.com. Uncover new investment possibilities today. Don't forget to hit the bell below to subscribe and then like and share this video. Let's get the word out there.